Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This time we're going to be exploring Irrealidad Alternativa by Sebastián Ravel.
Oh, yeah, this is a great one.
It was written back in 2005, and it's such a fascinating look at, well,
I
reality.
mean, the title itself translates to alternative unreality, so you know you're in for a ride.
Exactly. And it really lives up to its name, taking us into these deep questions of consciousness and how we perceive the world around us.
And especially how those perceptions can be altered,
Yes.
through the use of marijuana.
Right. So we're not just talking about reality in some abstract sense, but how our experiences, especially those influenced by marijuana, shape our understanding of everything.
It's like he connects those big ideas like consciousness and perception to the structure of society itself.
Hmm.
How our views on marijuana, how we regulate it, all of that affects our laws, relationships, even our sense of self.
And what I think is so cool about this book is that Ravel doesn't just present his own theories.
Oh, yeah, he brings in those user responses.
Exactly. So it's not just theoretical. It's grounded in these real-world experiences. These firsthand accounts are woven right into the analysis.
Gives us a much richer perspective that way, multiple layers of reality, you could say. We have Ravel's philosophical framework, his interpretation of these experiences, and then, bam, the raw voices of the users themselves.
Yeah, it's such a multifaceted approach, and it makes the whole thing so much more engaging. So Ravel kicks things off with this concept of duality.
Yeah, that push and pull between opposing forces.
Right. And he sees it everywhere, from the way our minds work to the larger systems of society.
It's this constant tension, this struggle, and that's where marijuana comes into play.
Okay, so how does marijuana fit into this idea of duality?
Well, Ravel argues that marijuana use creates a dual reality for the user. It's the tension between our everyday, normal perception of the world and then that altered state we experience under the influence.
So it's like marijuana acts as this lens, revealing a hidden layer of reality that's always there, but we usually can't perceive.
Exactly. He describes marijuana as a key unlocking hidden perceptions and giving us access to this, higher level of awareness.
That makes me think about those flash moments people describe having while using marijuana.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Those sudden bursts of insight, those
It's
revelations.
like they come out of nowhere. Do you think those moments are glimpses into this untapped potential Ravel's talking about, like alternative ways of being that we haven't fully realized yet?
He actually calls marijuana a simulator of reality, so I think you're right on the money.
Wow, a simulator of reality? That's a powerful image. So it's like we get to experience a simulated version of our fullest potential, just a taste of what we could be capable of.
That's the idea. But, and this is a big BUT, Ravel's super clear that this whole thing is nuanced. He warns against becoming too reliant on marijuana. It can hinder the development of our natural potential if we use it as a crutch.
So it can be a catalyst for growth, but also a trap if we're not careful.
Exactly. It all comes down to personal responsibility and mindful use, right? It's about finding that balance between exploring new realms of consciousness and actually cultivating our own inherent abilities without needing to depend on something external.
And this is where the societal context comes in, right? Because Ravel argues that all the negative perceptions and experiences surrounding marijuana use are heavily influenced by how we, as a society, structure and regulate it.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
Yeah, like our laws and cultural attitudes towards marijuana actually shape the way people experience it. So the fear and stigma can actually lead to more negative outcomes.
Exactly. So it's not just about the individual's relationship with marijuana, it's about the larger context in which that relationship unfolds. And that's where I think those user responses Revel includes become so powerful.
Because we're hearing directly from the people who have actually navigated this complex terrain. They've experienced both the potential benefits and the potential downsides firsthand.
And it's not a single story. Some people describe marijuana negatively impacting their mental health, anxieties, depression, even paranoia.
But then others talk about profound personal growth, expanded consciousness, even using marijuana as a tool for creativity and self-discovery.
It really emphasizes that there's no one-size-fits-all marijuana experience. It's deeply personal and influenced by a whole bunch of factors.
Right, and what I find interesting is how many of the users in the book emphasize personal responsibility and intentionality. It's like they're recognizing that marijuana is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used in ways that are helpful or harmful.
Right. It's not just about whether you use it or not, but how you use it. Your mindset, your choices, all of that plays a role. And that's where Ravel introduces those two pyramid models to illustrate this idea.
The gravitational pyramid of devolution and the pyramid of evolution,
I
right?
forgot it.
Okay, now things are getting really interesting. So how do these pyramids help us understand those opposing forces of duality that Ravel keeps coming back to?
Well, the gravitational pyramid of devolution shows how users can get caught in these downward spirals of dependence and negativity.
While the pyramid of evolution illustrates the potential for growth, for using marijuana to reach higher levels of consciousness and personal development.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that these pyramids aren't static destinations. It's not like you reach a certain level and you're stuck there. They represent the cyclical nature of our growth and evolution.
So even if we reach those highest levels of consciousness, we might find ourselves cycling back down, facing new challenges. It's a continuous process.
It really is. It's like this constant dance between those opposing forces of duality. And that's something we're going to dive into much deeper as we explore these pyramids in detail.
Okay, I am hooked. Let's unpack these pyramids and see where these two paths lead.
Let's do it.
But first, we need to take a quick break. We'll be back in a moment to continue our deep dive into Irrealidad Alternativa.
See you soon. So are you ready to start climbing these pyramids?
I am. Let's start with this gravitational pyramid of devolution. I'm curious to see how Ravel breaks down this downward spiral.
Well, at the very bottom, we have the initiates.
The beginners.
Yeah, they're kind of on the fence about marijuana, haven't fully embraced it, maybe tried it a few times, but they're grappling with that duality we talked about.
Still questioning it all, its purpose, how it affects them.
Exactly. And they're super susceptible to those societal messages that paint marijuana in a negative light. Then, as we move up, we encounter the recreational users.
So these are the folks who use marijuana mostly in social settings.
Right. It's about loosening up, having fun with friends, maybe escaping the pressures of daily life for a bit.
So it's less about personal exploration and more about the social aspect.
You could say that, and their use is often tied to that group dynamic, which can be tricky. On the one hand, it might mean their use is less frequent, less intense than someone using it daily for medicinal purposes.
But on the other hand, they might not have developed a deep understanding of the substance itself.
Exactly. They might not be as aware of the potential risks or the importance of responsible use. And then we come to the medicinal users.
Now, these are the individuals who are using marijuana intentionally to address specific health challenges, right?
Yep, physical or mental. They tend to be more informed about marijuana's properties, its potential benefits.
But even with that knowledge, they're still at risk of developing a dependence, aren't they?
Unfortunately, yes. And that's where the chronic users come in. They've crossed that line from intentional use to a point where their lives really revolve around marijuana.
It becomes a coping mechanism.
Yeah, a way to numb out, escape discomfort, or difficult emotions. And at this level, those psychological side effects we mentioned earlier, the anxiety, paranoia, depression, even social isolation, they can really take hold.
So that duality we talked about has tipped over to the negative side.
Exactly. And sadly, at the very top of this pyramid, we have those who are really struggling. Their dependence is deep-rooted, and it becomes incredibly difficult to break free. They might even resist help, not willing or able to see how serious it's become.
That's heartbreaking because it highlights that potential darkness that can exist alongside the potential for growth and insight.
It's a powerful reminder of why Ravel's second pyramid, the pyramid of evolution, is so important.
Because it offers a different path, a way to use marijuana as a tool for positive transformation.
Exactly. So let's shift gears and explore this upward climb towards greater awareness.
Okay, I'm ready. What does this pyramid look like?
Well, like the devolution pyramid, it starts with those initiates. They're starting to explore marijuana, but with this sense of curiosity, of openness.
They're not just looking for a good time. They're open to the possibility of something more.
Yes. And as they move up, they enter what Ravel calls the storm of thoughts. This is where those flash moments start happening, those sudden insights, those revelations.
Oh, wow. So their minds are opening up to new possibilities, new ways of seeing themselves in the world.
Exactly. But it can be overwhelming. They might not have the tools to process those insights effectively. It can feel like a whirlwind of information and emotions.
So it's crucial to find ways to ground themselves, integrate those experiences in a healthy way.
Absolutely. And as they continue climbing, they reach a level where Their senses become heightened, perceptions sharpened. They start to see connections they missed before. Their intuition becomes stronger. It's like they're developing a much deeper understanding of themselves and their place in the universe.
That's amazing. So they're using marijuana
Yeah.
to unlock their inherent potential, push those boundaries of awareness.
That's it. And as they ascend further, they start to experience a dissolving of duality. They see beyond the ego, recognize the interconnectedness of everything.
That sounds almost like a spiritual awakening.
It can be. And if they embrace this non-duality, they can achieve incredible clarity and liberation.
But I imagine that's not easy to achieve.
Not at all. It requires a lot of self-awareness, a willingness to face those shadow parts of ourselves, and a real commitment to personal growth.
And even if you reach that peak, the journey isn't over, is it?
Nope. These pyramids are meant to represent the cyclical nature of growth and evolution. We're always learning, always evolving.
So even at the highest levels of consciousness, we might find ourselves cycling back down, revisiting old patterns, and encountering new challenges.
Exactly. It's a continuous process of expansion and contraction, learning and unlearning. And that's the beauty of it. There's always more to discover, more to explore within ourselves and the world around us.
It's fascinating how these pyramids illustrate those two paths available. It's like Ravel is saying that marijuana itself isn't inherently good or bad, but it's a tool that reflects the user's internal state and intentions.
You hit the nail on the head. It's all about how we approach it, how we integrate it into our lives.
You know what I find really interesting is how this whole idea of duality, those opposing forces, seems to run through the entire book. It's not just about the individual experience, it's about the societal structures too.
It's like those societal restrictions on marijuana almost create this self-fulfilling prophecy. It pushes people toward the negative side of the experience. Do you think Ravel's suggesting that a more open, informed approach could lead to more people experiencing the benefits and navigating the risks responsibly?
I think it's definitely a valid interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to be advocating for a shift in perspective, moving away from fear and judgment towards understanding and personal empowerment. He's not saying marijuana is for everyone, but he's challenging that narrative that it's purely dangerous with no good qualities.
And that's where those user testimonials are so impactful. We hear from people who have experienced that full spectrum, from the profound to the debilitating. It reinforces that there's no one truth when it comes to marijuana. Exactly. It all depends on the individual, their intentions, the context, which is a valuable takeaway for you, the listener. If you're considering exploring marijuana or already use it, Ravel encourages you to approach it thoughtfully, be aware of the risks and benefits, and take responsibility for your experience.
You know, this whole concept of marijuana as a simulator of reality is incredibly intriguing. It suggests that we all have this untapped potential within us, and certain experiences, like those facilitated by marijuana, can give us glimpses of what we're capable of. But then it makes you wonder, what does it mean to access that potential without relying on substances or external stimuli?
That's a big question, and one Ravel doesn't necessarily answer directly, but maybe the journey itself is the answer. Maybe it's through introspection, self-discovery, pushing our comfort zones that we unlock our true potential. Maybe it's about finding our own simulators, be it creative pursuits, spiritual practices, or just engaging with the world mindfully.
It seems like Irrealidad Alternativa is ultimately a call to awaken to our own power. We're the architects of our own reality.
I love that. We create our own realities. And whether or not marijuana plays a role is a personal choice. But the invitation to explore, to question, to create a life aligned with our values, that's universal.
Yeah, finding our own simulators. It's a powerful idea. What kind of things come to mind when you think about that? Like, what are those experiences or practices that could help us tap into those deeper levels of awareness, but without relying on substances?
Well, a lot of people these days are turning to meditation and mindfulness practices.
Yeah, maybe.
It's about quieting the mind, connecting with the present moment, and I think that can definitely lead to some profound insights.
For sure. And for others, it might be through creative expression, like art, music, writing. Anything that allows you to kind of step outside that everyday routine and connect with something larger than yourself, right?
Absolutely. Ravel's work, I think, points to this universal human desire to transcend our limitations and experience a more expansive reality.
We're all searching for something.
And marijuana is just one tool, certainly not the only one. You know, this also makes me think about the role of community and connection.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, it seems like a lot of the negative experiences associated with marijuana stem from isolation, from that stigma surrounding it. What if we created a culture where people felt safe to explore these altered states of consciousness together,
Hmm?
in a supportive environment?
That's a really cool idea. It's like shifting the whole societal perspective. Instead of fear and judgment, we approach these experiences with curiosity and openness. Imagine the potential for growth for both individuals and society as a whole.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the power of these tools, but also using them responsibly, ethically, and with support. This deep dive has really been eye-opening.
I agree. Irrealidad Alternativa is so much more than just a book about marijuana.
It's about reality itself.
It makes you question everything you think you know. It's a journey into the depths of our own consciousness and the transformative power of duality.
Ravel encourages us to become conscious architects of our realities, to find our own simulators, and to always keep growing, keep exploring.
And whether marijuana is part of that journey or not, the invitation to explore, to question, to create a life that truly aligns with our values, that's something we can all embrace.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So listener, we leave you with this question. What are your simulators? What experiences have you had that gave you a glimpse of your own untapped potential? And how can you continue to cultivate that potential? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. We'll see you on our next deep dive.